Hi,
Great.
Hearties. I am Marg Stark, one of the Facebook admins, and welcome to Heart to Heart. I'm joined today by,
Kim McDonald. I'm also an admin and I'm in Ontario, Canada.
and we're very excited to welcome today Elizabeth Stewart. Yay!
Yay.
One of the
Thank you.
writers on When Calls the Heart. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being with us.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So
Hi.
it's really hard from an IMDb bio to really grasp, but you have been with the show since the very pivotal season 5.
Yes, that
So
was my
quite a
first season.
while. It looks like there it shows that you have written 15 episodes. Does that sound right?
Oh, probably about that. Our writing has sort of changed a great deal over the years. In some seasons, in those early seasons, really your name was just put on an episode, but everybody was writing on every episode.
Right.
Latterly, it's been more, that's the episode you wrote.
Okay,
So,
got it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. As I think we've gotten a little bit of a sense of that talking with Derek Thompson as well as John Tinker this season. We would ask him, "Oh, who came up with that line?" And it's interesting how collaborative it really is. So that's
Extremely
very cool.
so. Extremely.
But just looking very briefly last night, you wrote Ned and Flo's wedding episode. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Archie Grant's visit to Hope Valley.
Yes.
The Lucas and Elizabeth Virginia Woolf reading trip. Is that correct? The non-date.
Not the non-date.
The non-date trip, right? And
Yes.
And then the very agonizing, I can't even imagine having to write the scene in which Elizabeth got the news that she didn't quite get the news. She just saw the Mountie there during, was it Carson Shepherd's surprise party or whatever, where she and Abigail go out into the street. So yeah, tell us about writing that moment. That must have been a hard episode to write.
Okay, true confession here. I mean, I don't think I wrote that scene.
Got it.
I mean, what generally happens is the showrunner does the final pass on the episode.
Right.
And a lot can change from the time the writer writes the second draft, which is contractually where officially you end, although you do keep writing quite a long time after that. But at some point, the showrunner will take the episode and do his or her pass on it. And I cannot take responsibility for that scene.
We're not going to pin it on you, Elizabeth. No.
Oh, no,
but you know what's so funny about that episode is I was in that river called denial. Dan Lissing had been missing from a number of episodes during that season. And then that episode was called In My Dreams. And I will never forget that because other Hearties were like, yeah, he's gone, and I was like, no, it's a dream. It's a dream. It's really a dream. Yeah. So I have no idea. Do you have any idea why it was called In My Dreams?
I don't. Honestly, okay. I don't know. Yeah.
All right. This is my leftover trauma that I'm speaking from my experience. So I'm just passing it along.
Yeah. I don't think it's any secret that Jack left the show because Daniel wanted to leave the show. And it was not a choice the writers wanted to make at all.
I'm sure.
But it's one of those left curves that creates better stories sometimes or a more interesting path.
I'm so glad you said that because I think it has, obviously we would never want Jack to leave.
No, exactly.
But it certainly did give the show a lot of different areas and a lot of different feelings to explore. So
and it gave Elizabeth this whole path of being a single mother, of finding her way after this great love in her life. So it's been interesting. And then it just goes to show that the writers aren't always in control. I mean, things happen that require a shift in thinking, and that's part of the creative process. And
I think we're really getting a sense of that from John, talking to John, and also with Derek, and hear from you as well, that there's just lots of different variables and that the writers have to take into account. And often it's things from left field and you've got to accommodate and figure out how to make the story work. in the, proven ways that you have. So Kim, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. So let's talk about episode 4.
So you want to know
what scene did you most enjoy writing, and what proved most challenging or presented a lesson for you?
Well, okay, that's hard. Well, again, a lot changed from my draft to what you will see on Sunday. So for me, I had a little thing going with Rosemary and Lee and their newspaper. There is something of that there, but Lee starts writing for Rosemary,
right,
and it leads to some marital conflict, and so those were fun scenes to write. Lee and Rosemary are always fun to write for, and of course the actors just inhabit those characters so fully. You know that whatever you give them, they're just going to make it shine, right? So that was really fun.
I love that you used your hand gestures, because that's Rosemary.
That's so Rosemary.
That's right. I must be channeling her at this moment, right? There was some great stuff in episode 4. Well, I can say what it was in, right? So Lucas babysits little Jack for the first time. So faces some challenges there, and it's one more step in his relationship with Elizabeth as well. So there's some fun to be had there. Augustus Landis reappears, the school inspector.
Yeah. Dark cloud. Another dark cloud on Hope Valley.
Another dark cloud. But the fun of writing an episode is to have some light stuff in it, some active stuff. I mean, Lucas babysitting was quite active, and then some darker stuff. And Landis brings with him a lot of darkness. So it's a nice balance to have from a writer's point of view. And I think the audience with the Hearties will find that it hits a lot of notes.
So we're curious, of course, about the overall writing process as well. And of course, we're anxiously awaiting Hallmark to green light season 10. So
aren't we all? Yes.
So can you give us a little bit about what the writing process would be like if they were to green light it tomorrow? Like what would happen from there?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because the last 2 seasons have been very much dictated by COVID, right? We've been very restricted. Yes. Before that, the story room was in Los Angeles, and we were all gathered together for 10, 12 hours a day, whatever it took. And it was a very mechanical process that you're actually using file cards. I don't know if you've seen pictures of writer's room, but yeah. So we're structuring episodes and coming up with ideas and spitballing and eating snacks and drinking lots of coffee.
Sounds like my kind of place.
But with COVID, all of that changed. And ironically, for me, I live in Vancouver, and at the beginning of season 8, the story room for the first time was going to be in Vancouver. So I would have been able to, drive to the office from home. But then COVID hit. So we spent about 2.5 days in the office. I remember it very clearly. And then word was starting to come about, maybe we should go to the grocery store and stock up on a few things. And we all decided we better head home, and that was it. Wow. From then on out, ever since, it's been Zoom, and which is a different process.
Yep.
I mean, it's not as much fun, to be honest. You don't have that camaraderie and the
energy. Yeah,
exactly. The joking and all of that distracted time that somehow frees the brain to come up with new ideas, right? It's much more focused on the job at hand. So, I mean, we were all asked to come up with story ideas before our first meeting of the season. So the first meeting is generally broad strokes. What would you like to see happen this season? With then you go through each character, what might happen. for them, and you're not locking yourself into anything. You're just creating some arenas where something might happen. And even on Zoom, that will spark other writers. Oh yeah, well then this could happen. And you start building on each other's ideas, which is, for me, the really joyful process of a writer's room. It is. It really is terrific. But working within those limits, we've still created great seasons. So yeah.
How many writers are in the writer's room?
Last season, we had 5. Things changed a little bit in season 9. In season 8, the writing staff was really just John, Derek, and myself. Last season, Peter DeLuise wrote, and Ali Devereaux, our stories writer's assistant, wrote her first episode.
So excited for that. That's great.
Yeah, wonderful.
John just references her all the time, of course, because she's right hand in terms of, and over the course of 9 seasons, you're going to have some change in showrunners, and so you need somebody to bring that consistency, and Ali seems to be that person. So
yeah,
no one knows it better than she does. That's really fun that she's gonna.
True. Well, Derek,
Peter DeLuise an episode too.
Yes. So yes, Peter had a great episode as well. But both Peter and Derek have been on the show forever, right? So they have quite an
yes, they do indeed. Knowledge. Yes.
Well,
yeah. Do you have a favorite character that you like to write for?
Well, gosh, there's so many, right? It's again, Lee and Rosemary are always fun to write for. Their banter is great. Bill Avery is super fun to write for, especially the lovable, cantankerous.
I love guy. That character so much. Yeah. 45-degree angle. I'm still dying over the 45-degree angle. It's
oh my gosh, that was so
I just love the curmudgeon so much.
Exactly. So but he's lovable at the same time, right? Yeah. He has such a good heart.
Such a big heart. Yeah.
That's right. And Henry Gowan is very interesting to write for completely different reasons, because he's just such a tortured soul and curmudgeonly in his own way. But really, Elizabeth is the heart and soul of the show. So Elizabeth is the one. And if you can follow what's going on in her life and in her mind and in her heart, that's what creates an episode, I believe. So
right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Presumably you would bring a lot of insight to that, I would think.
Because I'm a woman, or
because you're a woman?
Your name's Elizabeth?
I don't know. Your name's Elizabeth.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah. That's true. Well, it is true. I mean, I'm a mother. I'm older. I've been through some stuff in my life, and it's interesting to track what the course she's been on. And it was not something that was desired or planned for when Jack departed Elizabeth's life, but it's just led to such an interesting course. And I think it makes her path so relevant too, to the contemporary audience. I mean, how many single parents are there out there who are relating to that? And even though it's in this frontier town,
yes.
I've never really thought of this as an historical show. I think it takes place in a sort of suspended reality that's not really any particular time or place.
Right.
It's just the community of as a family. Yeah,
it was interesting. Derek was telling us that he thinks he was hired in part because he had a lot of forestry and sawmill, whatever. But then he's also, the Hearties really associate him with a lot of romance and a lot of romantic writing. So of course, great writers always think that they, and of course they do write for other genders very well, but it is interesting. I think the role of a woman writer in that writer's room is critically important. So
yes, very much so. Yes.
Is there anything you think you're known for?
I like to write about emotion. I like to write emotional scenes. I like to write scenes with a dynamic in them. I mean, every scene should have a dynamic in it, or there's a disagreement going on, there's an exploration going on. And that's not only in a romantic sense with a romantic partner, but also, especially, I think, on One Calls the Heart, with the female friendships, which are so important.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Well, and now you're speaking to the Hearties language, because of course the show has enabled these incredible friendships, and so I think
amongst the Hearties.
I think that's why, of course, Rosemary and Elizabeth's discord last season was just so hard. You know, we enjoy that, the female friendships on the show so very much. So
well, and it's realistic that friends do
that. Yes, indeed, of course.
They work their way through them, but
they go through things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things I've grown to appreciate about Hope Valley is that it's a place where every character gets to be their best selves. You know, yeah. And I think that's true of every character. I mean, obviously with characters like Henry Gowan, you can see that, but everybody finds a path to, or an opportunity at least, to be the best they can be. Yeah, it's so positive that way. It's such a community, a supportive community. Yeah, so I mean, I would never want to see Rosemary and Elizabeth bickering for too long.
No, they can't for long. But I love that I think there's so many lessons and values and things in the show that help us see how to be our best selves. So it's very cool.
Yeah, we try.
I love it.
Yeah.
Do you often go on set, and are you participating in any last minute changes that happen? Like, how do you deal with those when there's, someone throws you for a loop? So, a cast member's sick and isn't going to be there to film or something.
Right. Well, of course, you don't need to be on set in order to respond to a situation like that. And we've often been in situations where, this character's not available. So everybody just, takes a scene and rewrites and gets it done. Regrettably, I am so sad to say I have never been on set. I mean, I live here in Vancouver. Set is like a 45-minute drive from my house. So that was because for the first 3 seasons I was working on the show, I was in Los Angeles in the story room there. And as I say, the minute the story room moved up here, COVID hit. And of course, they had to be very careful about how many people they admitted on set for the past.
Well, there's another great reason we have to have season 10.
Yeah,
Elizabeth needs to get to the set.
Exactly.
And, the Hearties like to come up for reunions, and some of the writers have led us through the set. So that would be another opportunity that we could have to meet you and talk with you. So
that would be wonderful.
Okay. Yet another impetus for us to make it happen.
We can't wait to get back to Vancouver.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
So you touched on this a little bit already, but it is a very sort of weird suspended belief kind of magical town that we're in. We actually talked to Brian Bird last night, and he was sharing with us the evolution of the show, how in the initial year probably was a little bit Little House on the Prairie, and then Hallmark, I don't think it's any secret, wanted to take it towards Downton Abbey. And then, and shows do this. They go through their, a series that are successful. They kind of find their legs, and it sometimes takes a little while for them to do that. So, Brian was saying that by season 3, it really sort of found its footing. But you're absolutely right. It's like quasi-historical, quasi-modern. We have women who are mayors and doctors and pharmacists and cafe owners and all sorts of, and, it is a place where we can be our best selves. So talk about writing that sort of magical world and what that's been like for you.
Well, it just allows you to be fairly light of spirit as you're writing. I mean, it's not like you're writing a crime drama where there are horrible people doing horrible things.
Yeah.
It means actions tend to be a bit small. You're not going to have massively explosive disruptions between characters, or people vowing to hate each other for the rest of their lives. And
right.
The whole point, if there is a rupture in a friendship or a romantic relationship, the point is to find your way back and to see where you can actually observe how individuals see that maybe I was a little bit wrong. Maybe I should see it from this person's point of view, which, if only we all lived that way all the time, right?
Yeah.
So you're allowed to live, you're right, in this very idealized world in your head, in the process of writing, and it's lovely. When I was a kid, many decades ago, I loved the original Star Trek. And it occurred to me very soon after starting to work on One Calls the Heart that it's sort of the same vibe. It's a very positive, Star Trek has been, people love it because it is very positive. It's a very positive vision of the future, right?
Yes.
And it's a community that's a family. So it's kind of the same that way.
Got it.
So that made it really wonderful too. Just and there's something about how it's contained as well. It's this town and yes, we have strangers who come into town, and we mention other towns around and all of that stuff. And there was season 2, there was a lot said in Hamilton, but generally you're in this contained environment. So it becomes a little bit of an interesting puzzle about who's interacting with whom and how that affects this person over there. So it's fun that it's contained that way. It's a little bit of puzzle solving, I think, too. Yeah.
That is neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Tell us about writing for Elizabeth all these years. You did allude to it a little bit, but she is the heart and the soul, and she's been on a really long journey. How do you, and we've seen her, go through a number of phases. What do you see as the next phase, and what are you enjoying about writing for her now?
Well, it's wonderful to see her. When we first met her, she was a brand new teacher, very unsure of herself in the world, just totally at sea in this frontier town. But progressively, she's become more and more capable. And when she was widowed, with the help of her dear friends and community, she learned to be stronger still. And on top of all of that, she was compelled to write about this experience and fulfill this other part of herself, this creative part of herself, to express herself. So she's become so much stronger over the years and capable. I mean, she is now, if when we first saw her as a teacher, she was, a little unsure and not quite in control of her classroom. Now we see her being just so respected by her and loved by her students, absolutely in charge, knowing what's best for her class. And we see her standing up to people like Augustus Landis because of that. Mm-hmm. So she's she knows who she is now. She knows what she wants for herself and her son. So it's been interesting to watch that progression and to occupy her head a little bit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, she lost her temper a little bit this episode and had to own that with her class. And yeah, what would you say is her Achilles heel? What are her?
That's interesting. What is her Achilles heel? Gee, I don't know. She's pretty flawless.
I know she is. Is she just overly responsible? Maybe she's overly responsible, and she does butt into things, but she does kind of.
I was going to say that with all that confidence that she has, growing into herself, that she seems to try to insert herself into other people's affairs as well, it seems. And maybe, some people, some of the Hearties feel that might be an Achilles heel.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I mean, I would see that to be out of caring, but okay, to be perfectly honest, I tend to do that myself.
I'm right there with you. Right there with you. That's why I relate
to maybe I'm more forgiving of that.
I was so with you. Yes. Yeah. Love it.
She maybe overthinks a bit too much sometimes, worrying about, is this the right relationship? Is this the right thing to do?
Yes.
But she's a thinker, and she's a deep thinker and a deep feeler. So she's going to do that. She's going to consider and think about what the next steps are, and how it affects all the people around her she loves. You know, I mean, I think she went through that with Nathan, especially, right? And having to recognize in herself that this wasn't the path for various reasons, but just the agony of watching someone she cared deeply about suffer was very hard on her. And yet at the same time, she had the strength to make the decision that was right for her. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
What
would you say is your proudest moment of writing for When Calls the Heart? It's always hard to talk about that, isn't it?
It is. It's very hard. You know, I think way back to my first season, season 5, when I was the newbie in the room and was pretty quiet and just observing and trying to learn the ropes. And that was a season when we were all contributing to every episode. We would divide up, okay, you write act 2, I'll write act 3, you know. And I don't even know which episode it was. Perhaps, maybe it was the final episode of that season, because the scene I'm thinking of is the widow's scene. I don't know if you remember that, when Abigail calls together some women in the town and brings Elizabeth in, and they're meant to be giving her strength and comfort.
Yeah.
So I was assigned that scene. And I think writing that is when I really started to get the show. Yeah.
That was a beautiful scene.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because of who the characters were. And you could look at, and it was Clara who said, I felt robbed, you know, and Elizabeth had that moment. That's what I feel, you know, and it was okay to feel that negative emotion. Yeah. So I think that scene stands out in my mind. As when
Hearties believe that's a nod to them with the quilts, because we did, you know, in the initial years, send all of the heart quilts and things to us. I think that's among a top 10 favorite scene. Definitely.
Well, and I think that was a nod to the Hearties. I remember people talking, and again, that was my first, I was just learning the ropes, but I remember people in the writer's room talking about, oh yeah, the Hearties are really the quilts and the hearts, and this will be meaningful to them. Well, yeah, I do remember.
It certainly was. Thank you. So thank
you
so much.
Our admins actually created a replica of it.
Wait, who did that, Kim?
Christy did.
Oh, Christy. So one of our Facebook admins has been the person, well, among the people who's in charge of doing the decorating at HFR, and she and her daughter do a lot of quilting and have quilted the whole town in.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, we can't thank you enough for spending time with us. This has been
thank you so much.
Fun.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Love every behind the scene detail that we can get. And it's, we have a lot of young Hearties. I've seen kids young girls who are writers. And I have to think some of that has been inspired by Elizabeth, and maybe by Elizabeth too, you know? So thank you.
Well, thank you to both of you and to all the Hearties. We know you're out there, and every day we say, what would the Hearties think of this? We do. We know you're there.
We're perched on your shoulder. We're perched on your shoulder.
We do.
Angel, devil. It's all good.
Thank you to all of you.
Thank you. This has been Heart to Heart. Please join us Sundays, 8:00 on the Hallmark Channel. And of course, on Twitter as well with the hashtag Hearties. Thank you.